I've been spending a lot of time in Reaper and watching a lot of YouTube videos. Still some things I couldn't quite figure out. So after doing some research, I found some techniques that I found really saved me some time. So I thought I'd do a quick tips and share those with you. Let's get started. When using plugins, I often want to save the current setup as a preset with a name. If the preset name has characters like, say, a space, that's going to cause actions to trigger in Reaper. In the case of the space, the song's going to start playing. You can get around this by using the Send All Keyboard Input to Plugin feature. If you're in the list of plugins, you can right-click on a plugin that's in the list and select it from the context menu. If you're already in a specific effect, you can left-click on the plus icon and select the same option. Now, when you type spaces, they just go to the name of the preset, which is what I always want. My drums record into two separate mono tracks. This is a bit of a pain in that I have to now either group or use other techniques to manipulate these together. I found it much easier to just combine the two tracks into one stereo track. Select both tracks and right-click and select Free Item Positioning. And I've seen this problem before, so it's good it happened. The tracks, for some reason, didn't respond properly or I did something wrong, but I've learned I can just toggle the Free Item Positioning setting one track at a time, and then it works. Notice the waveforms take up half the space. Now, drag one of the waveforms into the other track. Delete the now empty track, and finally double-click the item and pan the right track all the way right and hit apply. Don't forget to hit apply. And pan the other one to the left, hitting apply again. And if you do this after you've set levels, you will likely need to adjust the volume of the track upwards by about 6 dB. I often want to see more detail on the waveform than the default shows me. You can normalize the waveform and make it louder, but I just want a visual change. The Shift key and up arrow will increase and Shift down arrow will decrease the size of the waveforms. I think of these as waveforms, but Reaper refers to them as peaks. Let's bring up the action list and filter on peaks. You can see a lot of commands for peaks. You can see I also mapped Command equals and Command minus to zoom in and out, which are zoom keys I'm used to in my browser and other applications. There are some interesting actions for spectral peaks. I've played with these and I think I'm on preset 3 right now. So consider exploring these as a bonus tip. If you want to get back to your original settings, there's an action for that, and I've assigned it a shortcut of Command 0, also what my browser and other apps use for zooming back to the original size. If you need an effect on just a portion of a track, or you have a CPU-intensive effect and the track has only a small area with an item, you can lighten the CPU load by applying the effect to just the item or a portion thereof. If you have a full track length item and you just want the effect on a portion, create some splits to isolate the portion for the effect. Then right-click that isolated item and select Take, Show Effects Chain for the active take. Now, search for and select the effect you want and add it. Mine is already filtered, so I'll select Amplitude, which is a CPU-intensive plugin. It even takes a few seconds to show up. Note the FX button on the track is still gray. The effect only uses CPU during the time that item is playing or rendering. If we need to modify the effect, use the FX icon that is on that section of the item. Command B brings up the Project Media Bay, also available under the menu bar with View Project Media FX Bay. Really useful if you need to do something like add or remove an effect from all the selected tracks. There are some common actions like removing all instances of an effect from all tracks across the bottom, and right-clicking in the table offers up various actions you can take or just more information like which tracks use a particular effect. When rendering, be aware that there is a post-processing dialog that can be helpful. If you haven't used it, it's called Postprocess. Once you use it, it can be confusing in that its label changes to reflect what is selected. I can see how this is helpful, but changing the label of a control makes it harder for me to find it. What it changes to can vary. If you select multiple options, it can combine them. Here it's showing I'm trimming and adjusting mono by 3 dB. But when I select pad, the label doesn't change, so it doesn't show me what I'm doing. But sometimes it will just change to add a suffix of an asterisk to let you know multiple things are happening. But my tip is that this dialog can be really useful. Once I dragged in a bunch of MP3 files so I could re-render them from 48 kilohertz to 44.1 so they would play on a particular device I had. And I used the source setting for selected tracks stems, so I would get a new file for every original MP3 file. Unfortunately, they all came out the length of the longest file I had dragged in. It kind of makes sense because this was designed for stems. However, using the post-process dialog, I could tell it to trim the trailing silence, and it converted all the files for me in one fell swoop. Very convenient. The final tip is just for Mac users, although there might be a similar tool on Windows. You can search within Reaper with Spotlight. Hit Command Spacebar to bring up Spotlight and type a term. I'll use item. This isn't too bad, mostly Reaper terms and one Mac command, but depending on how you have Spotlight set up, you might get a lot of results you don't want. Luckily, it can really help to hit Command 3 and limit the search results to actions. This won't be only actions from Reaper, but in my experience, that's mostly what I get. If you want to get rid of that filtering, use the icon in the upper left. Now it's back to no filter. But I'm going to hit Command 3 again to turn it back on, and you can see the icon has changed. Now I'll click off of Spotlight and bring it back up, and you can see it's still in the filtered mode. In case you think you can do the same thing just by searching in Reaper's action menu, let me give you another example. I know I used a template with the word crunch. Just typing that here searches through the entire menu system, including my custom templates, and it's showing me that I have a track template under full circle, then acoustic guitar, and that is likely what I'm looking for. One limitation is it's not searching the settings dialog inside Reaper, so you still have to use the search box in that dialog if you want to hunt for a particular option. Okay, that does it. I hope something here was useful and you enjoy using Reaper just that much more. Rock in peace.